Hi, Mark.
How are you? How you doing?
We already covered this.
We did.
Before the show.
I apologize. It's just banter. It's just.
I understand.
How are you doing? Good.
We need all of you individually to tell us how you're doing, one by one, starting with you.
Yeah. And then we'll take questions.
We will not accept a thumbs up. We need a verbal confirmation.
Yeah.
Woo.
We'll do that for 45 minutes and then take questions.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Hey, the book. Everybody get the book yet? Yeah. So we'll get into all the characters and the history and everything like that, but I gotta say, maybe I'm dating myself, but the book reminded me of kind of the somewhat lost art of the comedy book, of the humor book, of old humor magazines. Did you have any kind of books that from your past, from your childhood, that you were like, I love those kind of humor books, and I want
The Bible, of course. Because it's a great value. You get so many books inside the book itself. No, that is a really nice compliment, because that is what I want to do with it. When Sam, who is our editor, we turned the book in and she quit hours after we turned it in.
Because she just was terrified by it?
I got one email that was like, I'm so sick of this shit.
Here, say some other words you want up there.
Piss. Diarrhea?
That's going to take a little while, though. No, pretty good.
Thank you. No, she went on to a different company, but she was really passionate about the book. Every once in a while when you do this kind of thing, you'll get a lot of people of interest pitching you stuff. Like, hey, what if you did this? What if you did this? And you set up a Zoom. And I've come to not really expect too much out of them, but she had such a passion for doing it, and she actually pitched doing a book like what you're talking about, and she brought up a favorite book of hers, which is it was a Simpsons book, I think, called Bart's Guide to Life or something like that.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
She sent it to me and said, I really think that you could do something like this, and it made me flash back to going to the malls, going to the Westminster Mall, and hanging around the B. Dalton, and always going to the humor section right away, and seeing what the new books were. And there were a couple of books that I mentioned in our early meetings, which were Late Night with David Letterman, the book, which was a big influence on me as a comedian. And I would just sit there reading. I would reread it over and over and over, trying to figure out how did they write this? How did this person write a joke? How else could you write a joke? And then the two Penn and Teller books were actually something that were very influential on me. I don't know if you've ever seen those, but they're really interesting. They're how to pull tricks on your friends. So those were two things where I started to say oh wow, you can do this with a book. I think if people were to buy it, then we could do something like that. But you're right, it is sort of a lost art at this point.
I gotta ask, what else have you been pitched? You said you set up the Zoom meeting.
Right.
What do people want to do with Comedy Bang Bang that you say, all right?
God, I tend to forget them the minute...
The minute the Zoom is over?
Well, I was just pitched another book the other day, and that's one that I'm sort of wrestling with, do I do it or not, which I obviously can't say what it is, but
yeah.
But that'll happen a lot, where suddenly your agent just calls you out of the blue and goes this producer wants to... Well, it happens more with script writing. This producer wants to pitch you their movie. The weirdest movie pitch I ever got was this was back in the early 2000s when reality TV first started, and it was a producer, and I drove all the way out to Sony the Sony lot, if you can believe
Which
it.
is where? Which is where?
The furthest, anywhere you are in the world, it's the furthest point. And the pitch was, it was like this producer, and he goes, all right, you know how reality shows are really big right now? This is gonna be, it's called 500. And there's one house with 10 people who are 500 pounds. And there's one house with 10 people who are 100 pounds. And the people who are 500 pounds are trying to lose weight, and the people who are 100 pounds are trying to gain weight. And the competition is I think it was actually 5,000. It was whoever, if the 500 pounders can lose 5,000 pounds combined, whoever's closest to either gaining or losing 5,000 pounds wins the reality show. And meanwhile, the really skinny people are getting to look more normal, and the really fat people are getting to look more normal, and then there's a romance. And I was just like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Oh my God.
And this is his movie idea.
Yeah.
That he wanted me to write.
And you said...
I'm in.
I mean, jobs don't come every day, right? Like, okay, so the podcast, coming up on what, 14 years?
14 years on Monday.
Wow. Yeah.
Who's been listening for all 14? Really? Yeah, I would have expected that. Front row Johnny over here.
I have to say, when I was doing research, and I've listened to a bunch, but not all, and there is this...
It would surprise me to learn you've listened to one episode.
No, I have, but there's this wiki that is incredible. Like, they know more maybe than you know about the podcast.
Yeah, that was the wiki. I love the people who, I think the person who started the wiki wrote a piece in the book, Caroline Anderson. She wrote the Monster Mash guy. She co-wrote with Nick Weiger. But yeah, the wiki, actually part of what we wanted to do with the book was there are these character biography pages every 20 pages or whatever. And we tried mainly to do new stuff for the book because the first couple of people who submitted things, they just kind of transcribed what they did on previous episodes. And I read it and was like, I don't know, if I were a fan, it would amuse me, but like I'd rather see new stuff. So then that's when we wiped everything clean. We're like, okay, just write new stuff. But the one kind of homage to the old stuff are these character biographies. And the reason that we did it is because when we were doing the third season of the Comedy Bang Bang Talk Show, TV show, we had Taryn Killam and Paul Britton on as the Calvin's twins, and neither of them could remember anything they talked about. So they were like, what did we say on your thing? It's like they punch horses, these guys punch horses, or...
Fantastic.
And so we said, okay, and this is when Caroline was working at the talk show. She was our writer's assistant for the entire time. And so I said, Caroline, do you mind listening to the episode and just jotting down any facts that we say? And so about 3 hours later, we got this email that was just so insane, and it had every fact about the Calvin's twins. And if you guys know the Calvin's twins, now triplets, just the freeways that you take to get there, to their bee honey farm ranch. It was the most insane email any of us had ever received. And we were just sitting there laughing at the details that we had forgotten about. So that I wanted to have a little bit of that in the book, where it's like, yeah, it's all old stuff we've talked about, but when you see it written down in a character biography, it's just so nuts.
That's so great. There's a few characters who I feel play pretty prominent roles in the book. One is Bob Duca.
Yes.
Bob.
Yeah. Seth Morris.
Yeah, and you still have a good relationship with your ex-stepfather, yes, that he shows up throughout the book.
Yes.
And everybody's going to have their favorites, and there's no question here. I'm just going to tell you my favorites. I thought the two Games, Andy Samberg, Hollywood Facts, and then Andy Daly, two Andys who did the Good versus Evil. I want to get 2 copies so I can actually cut out.
We made them playable, but I don't think you would have much success.
I don't think you
playing
could. If you were in the right state of mind,
Right,
you might
yeah.
have some.
Yeah, the games were fun, and that was really John who did most of the art for the book.
Which is great.
Yes,
It's
we have
so
a lot of
colorful.
great
it's a
artists.
Really colorful
Yeah.
book. If you don't like the content but like colors, the book.
Yeah, if you're colorblind, please do not buy this book. But John did most of the art, and he was really, really insistent. He's like, these have to be playable games. And there was a conversation where I was trying to bend the rules of the game a little bit, and he's like, He goes, I'm sorry I'm a stickler for this, but it's got to be a playable game. So
And they are.
they are playable, yes.
Yeah. I want to back to the podcast and something that you're, as you said, you don't remember everything that you had talked about on the TV
Right.
or whatever, and your assistant knew it all. What does it feel like when you're doing the podcast? Like, I know it's a tricky question, but like it seems like there can't be. You must feel so alive and so in the moment.
I have a question for you. What's the greatest orgasm you've ever had?
Yeah. I was.
I know your son
yeah.
is in the audience.
I was.
Maybe
Yeah.
that one?
I was no, that was good. The best one. I was listening to episode 201. No.
It's interesting because some people ask, like, are you ever in a really bad mood and you have to do the show? And it does happen occasionally where just you're very stressed and you have a day that's packed with a bunch of stuff, and then you have to do this in the middle of everything else, and it weirdly has the most soothing, calming effect on me, where just laughing with these really funny people just makes everything so much better. And Jason Mantzoukas and I have talked about this, where you come out of it just feeling so spent but so wonderful when it's really making you laugh. It's just, it really is the most fun thing to do. So, but I am in a fugue state where I literally forget about whatever we talked about the minute it ends. And people will sometimes see me on the street, or they'll tweet me references from something, and it'll just be that week, and I'll be like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Well, let's watch a clip to remind you.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And welcome to the show, episode 200.
Boom!
Boom indeed.
I mean, that is a lot of episodes.
That's too many episodes.
That's way more than I ever thought you'd
by
do.
half. Oh, no. I mean, when I first started this, 3 at most. 3 and out. I like to do the English TV model. 6 episodes, and then I'm done.
And then you're done.
Maybe
Faulty
a Christmas
Towers,
special.
12 episodes, 13, done.
What a clip.
Yeah. Your team sent it to us.
I know. I'm now realizing when Corinne asked me, do you want to watch these clips? And I said, nah. Corinne, by the way, she pulled all the clips. She's really the unsung hero of the book. Corinne is my coworker that I've worked with now since the second season of the Bang Bang TV show. She started as the set costumer. And the set costumer, what they do is basically like right before the cameras start rolling, they come and smooth out any wrinkles or make sure your mic isn't showing and stuff like that. So she started as the set costumer, and now we did the Bang Bang TV show, and then she started working for me and with me. And so she has been a producer on the Between Two Ferns movie and produced the television shows that we do. But she really wanted this book to go well. So in times where I was kind of like, this is just too much work, she would say, I'm taking care of all of it. And so she's really the unsung hero of the book. She took a lot of the pictures for the character bios. She had to listen to all of the episodes to write down all of the weird facts that are in the bios. And so she's really, and she pulled that clip.
So you're gonna fire her. That's
So
it.
she's out.
Let's show a different one. She picked a better one too.
Oh, okay.
I'm hungry. I'm so hungry.
Oh,
Hello.
what are you?
I'm a little boy.
Oh, what's your name?
My name's Forval.
Forval?
Forvo?
Yeah, it's like 5-0, but one less.
Oh, what are you doing here?
I'm an orphan, and I live on the streets, and I'm a big fan of the show, and I thought maybe you could adopt me, or maybe you could give me some scraps to eat, because I'm starving. My belly's all distended from no food.
Oh, is that what's going on with your belly?
Yeah, that's what's going on with my
Whoa!
belly. Jesus,
Relax.
man.
We don't use that kind of a language.
I mean, okay, understandable.
Okay.
Is she back on staff?
That's a good one.
You know what I like about the first one though, and I think I'm glad she picked it, is that it shows, first of all, you've had how many hundreds of episodes since then?
600 since then, yeah.
Okay, so that's crazy. And then the second thing is it shows that there is a real camaraderie there.
Yeah, it would surprise you to know that Jason and I are real friends. Yeah, no, that's been a real joy in doing this show too. Is I think it can be so easy to kind of lose track of friendships, and sometimes it feels like I don't have to get together with my friends because they're always coming over to my house to record podcasts. But so I've really figured out a way to monetize my friendships.
Well, I'm sure you've been asked this before, but and you've been a part of it too, whether you're being pitched a crazy reality movie or not. But sometimes you and your friends, you're in projects which, even if you love the project, involves compromise and involves people at a network saying you can't do this or we've tested this, and it seems that there's just a lot of fun in the freedom that you have.
Yeah, although I would say all of show business is compromise. I mean, I don't think a single thing I've done has not had some compromise. Even if it's, say, the Comedy Bang Bang TV show where the network, after the first couple of years, basically stopped reading the scripts and were just like, turn it in, you're fine. Even then you have financial compromises of, your whole day as a producer is saying like, hey, we can't get that location, or this is too expensive to do. We need to cut 3 days. The Between Two Ferns movie was like, hey, you need to cut 2 days in the middle of shooting, and so then you pick which scenes you're predicting the future. These scenes aren't going to matter, so we'll cut these out. Everything is compromise in show business, and I think the idea of the auteur, of the person who just has final cuts and doesn't take any notes, is kind of a myth and only has existed for a few, Quentin Tarantinos of the world. But yeah, but I really enjoy it though too.
But I'm saying the podcast allows you to
Yes.
not make those compromises to some degree.
Yeah, to some degree. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think so. I mean, although there still are discussions about certain things. When do you take commercial breaks? Stuff like that. But that is the great thing about podcasting, is it truly is a medium that is cheap enough to put together that the stakes are low enough that there aren't a million people kind of chiming in and telling you what to do. When you make, a $20 million movie, suddenly the stakes get very high, and you have to listen to a ton of people, So, but yeah, podcasting is great in that regard.
You mentioned Between Two Ferns. We've got to talk about that. I've got to mention though, I do a talk show at a couple of different clubs.
We do plugs at the end. by the way.
No. This is kind of like an anti-plug. And I showed up at one, and they started setting up plants around, and I was like, you gotta get rid of the plants.
Has it ruined?
You gotta get rid of the plants. I've seen Between Two Ferns. I don't want to be that. Did everybody going into the show, and then the film, yes, but the show, know exactly what they were getting involved in? Or were there people who ever got at all angry when they were on it?
Well, So it started just as like a joke kind of thing. I mean, we just did the first one in a sketch show I was already doing, and Zach had agreed to do a sketch with us. Only one sketch. He wouldn't be in the cast. He would only do one sketch.
Little did he know.
So he came back to the office, and we were kind of batting ideas around of what to do. And he said, you know, I used to have a public access show, and I've always wanted to do a public access show called Between Two Ferns. And I laughed immediately because I had a public access show when I was in high school, and I knew exactly what he was talking about. Is like when you have the black duvetine behind you, they try to fill the space up with anything like, and a plant is the cheapest thing they can do, so there's always like 2 plants. So I laughed a lot, and I was like, oh, you know, I've been talking to Michael Cera about doing something for the show. Maybe he would like be the guest on that. And Michael immediately said yes. So we just kind of improv'd that, and it was, you know, friends like messing around, and Zach immediately hit on the combative interview guy that he does, because that's just like his relationship with Michael in a way, you know, like.
Which is also like the internet's relationship with Michael Cera.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because Zach is actually super nice and feels really bad about insulting people unless they're his friend. So the first few were just friends, and he can get into character and just be super mean to a Michael Cera. Then we did Jimmy Kimmel and John Hamm. Like, these are all friends of ours. But then the fourth one, I think, was we got a request from Natalie Portman to do it, and none of us had ever met her. And so then began the long, now over a decade journey of me pleading with Zach to do jokes that we've written. And him saying like, no, it's too mean. I can't say these jokes.
You see that in like the end of the film, right? Where he's
Yes.
saying, oh my God, that's so mean. I don't want to do it.
There's a joke in the Obama one that we did, and the Obama one is the only one that we had to get a script vetted. Because even with Hillary Clinton and people, we somehow sold the team on, no, it's got to be improvised. And there was a lot of discussion with Hillary Clinton's people of like, they didn't want it to be improvised, and we said it's got to be improvised. But when Obama
Worked
was
out better for Obama.
But he's the sitting president of the United States,
That's
and at one point, I was really pushing for it to be improvised, and they said to me, he's the sitting president of the United States. So that one was vetted. The script was vetted. But we're back, I say backstage, it's not the White House. We're in the map room, and the map room is where they have all these maps up on the wall that have like yarn everywhere. They're like world maps, and it's like World War I maps.
Oh, wow.
That they've plotted out all these battles. And we're in the map room, and first of all, there are I think normal chairs in the middle of the room, and then there are chairs all along the side of the room. And Zach sits down on one of those chairs, and a guy comes in screaming at him saying, those are Abraham Lincoln's chairs! Don't sit in those! And Zach gets up and he's like, I'm sorry. And then then we start talking about the shoot, and then naturally at some point we all realize we're sitting in the chairs again. The guy comes in screaming at us. But
They should have like a thing on top of them.
I know,
Right?
yeah, why are they even in the room?
Yeah,
Why are we in the room?
yeah.
But Zach at a certain point is like, hey, you know that joke about how does it feel to be the last black president? I'm not going to do it.
But it's in there. It made it in.
Because I said to Zach, this has been vetted. And this is the psychology I had to get into. I said, it's going to throw him off if you skip over that joke.
All right.
And he's like, okay, yeah, I didn't think of that. Okay, all right, I'll do it. But it is the when you're directing the Between Two Ferns stuff, it is a real. We came into a fun way on the movie of how we would do it, which is there'd be a joke that we both agree is really funny and he has to do, but he feels like he can't in the moment do it. so I have to be in the director's chair saying, Zach, do joke number 14 on the page. And he goes, no, I'm not going to, that's too mean. I'm not going to do it. And then the person goes, oh, come on, you can do it. And he goes, nah, this is, okay. He wants me to do it. All right,
I love that. You're like the devil on his shoulder.
And that was a thing that we worked out before that, and with every single person we had to do it.
It could only the character almost could only be acted by somebody who was really nice.
I think so, because there isn't a sense of malice with them. I mean, there are a ton of jokes that we all know is technically a well-crafted joke that we just go like, yeah, it's so funny, but we just can't do it because we feel genuinely bad about whoever the target is. And I sort of think that's why the show works, is we're not mean people, I think, and so we're trying to just make people laugh. And I think like a lot of those jokes are just purely like showing that everyone looks good coming out of Between Two Ferns.
For sure.
And that's why we've intentionally said no to certain people over the years.
Like who?
There was a lot. I mean, there was a lot when Trump was in office of what are you doing with Trump? What are you doing with Trump? And we said no. There was. I remember Dick Cheney was one.
Wait. He wanted to be on it?
Yes.
That could have actually been worth seeing.
I think there was talk about Sean Spicer for a minute.
No.
And we were sort of like.
And he went Dancing with the Stars instead. Yeah.
Well, that's the question. Is okay. So then he does the Emmys, and Zach's there in the audience at the Emmys, and Colbert brings him out, and that's where you have to balance stuff out as a producer, is when you're getting an offer, when you're in a producerial position, like, oh my God, everyone's going to be talking about this. If we did it, everyone would talk about it, and you have to balance like, yeah, but is that the right thing to do? you know, and I know that people, even if we're savage to them on Between Two Ferns, they will come out of it looking good because they've played along, and it'll humanize certain people. And even though we had a plan for Sean Spicer of like what to do to really like stick it to him and show everyone like how shitty he is, we all know he's shitty.
Yeah.
Like all that comes out of it is people going like, I didn't like Sean Spicer before, but now I sort of like him, so.
And I would say that with Comedy Bang Bang, there also isn't malice. And I think that's part of the greatness of it.
Yeah, although I play like a sort of version of myself of like, I used to say the most annoying parts of myself, but yeah, so I mean, I always have to say like, hey, this interview is not going to be all that serious. And yeah, but there's no malice behind it. I think it's just to show people like, hey, this Hollywood star who you can hear them on, all of these podcasts that have now been started by the world's most famous people, where they have other famous people on to talk and have the same.
Does that piss you off?
Yeah. I never thought about it that way. No, I just think it's boring. Like, podcasting now is like, you can hear the same person going on the press tour and having the same conversation that they've had on every different podcast. It's like no different than television shows now, television interviews. Like, what's the point of it? But I think at least they come on Comedy Bang Bang and we're trying to do something different. And even at my nicest, if I don't know the person all that well, I'll be the most nice in the interview. Even at my most nice, they then have to sit there and endure comedians playing fake people. So it's.
I'm contractually obligated to play another clip.
Great.
Will that do?
Oh, most assuredly. I'm about to drop some religion on you, Oedipus Rexus. Here we go. Well, my name's Jesus Christ, and I'm here to say it's fun to rap in a spiritually ambiguous way. I've got a best mate. Neighbor Judas had occasion recently to say to him, "You despicable swine, you'd betray me to the feds? See if I ever turn your stones to breads. I'm just a young G from Nazareth, and now some front and Pharisees wish to put me to death. And for what? For befriending a prostitute? Or for giving evil temple money lenders the boot? All I'm trying to do is rap to folks about love and to question the design of our God above. Well, it's crucifixion time, so I've got to go. Happy Christmas, everyone, and cheerio. All right, sit down.
Andrew Lloyd Webber's still alive, right? I think so.
As of this taping,
Yeah.
I have some bad news for you. Right before we came out on stage.
Ever hear from him?
No, I'll tell you who we heard from. One day my phone rang, and why am I picking up the phone? What kind of lunatic answers phone calls? But I picked it up this one day, and I hear, Scott! I say, yeah. He says, Jim whatever. I go, uh-huh. He goes, Tom Leykis' manager.
Oh, no.
I just started laughing. And I go, oh, okay, so you've heard the show. Gotta get Tom on. Tom and Tom. Tom meets Tom. And I just kind of went, you know, the typical like, yeah, man, well, I got your number now, so we'll reach out and never talk to him again.
You mentioned that you had a public access show in
Yeah.
high school. So did you grow up? Was there a lot of comedy in the house, comedy books in the house? What turned you on in the beginning?
Hey, I think when I was like 13, my friend said, hey, have you ever seen Monty Python and the Holy Grail? And my mom I remember my mom wouldn't let me see it because she said, well, Monty Python is a dirty old man. And I think she was thinking of Benny Hill, but same diff. So I watched it over at their house when I was 13. I think that I had there were SNL syndicated reruns that I would watch. They were on at like 11 p.m. that I would watch around then too. So SNL, Monty Python, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Just read that with my son, who was here
Oh,
tonight.
really?
Yeah. We liked it. We did
Switch
like
off pages, or how'd you do it?
We did a little bit of that, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
Who, at what point did you say, I want to start doing this? And were there people along the way that kind of said, yeah, you can do this?
No.
What a setup to that.
Yeah, I mean, I was doing like my version of it of even though I grew up an hour away from LA, it still felt like very, very far because I didn't know anyone who.
Where were you, Orange County?
Orange County, yeah, and I'm not some Nepo baby. I have a Nepo baby now.
Who's
Every-
6
6 months.
6
Everything will be
months.
way easier for her.
Yeah.
I'll pass that along. You got your first applause today, Emerald. But I was doing whatever, like, sort of my version of like, local version of it. Like I said, I had a public access show, or
And what was the show?
it was called Centurion Highlights because we were the Cypress Centurions at my high school. So it was essentially like, it very weirdly started as a more of a hard news show where my friend was the anchor, and then I got like 1 4-minute comedy piece, and then I slowly just took over the show and forced my friend out. So
That's Hollywood. That's Orange
Yeah.
County.
But yeah, so I was doing speech competitions, drama.
What's speech? What's the speech?
Speech competitions are where they're like national competitions, but they start, locally, where you go in and either do like acting, at least back when I was doing it, there are various categories of dramatic interpretation or humorous interpretation, where you would take a play. I took stuff like Monty Python or Douglas Adams and did all the voices. You
Oh,
know.
wow.
I would call into the radio, like Kiss FM, and do voices. Some people know what I'm talking about. So I was always like trying to do something, but I didn't really know how to do it. I would get a book, like there was a book about stand-up. I also was watching a lot of stand-up, like Seinfeld and Jay Leno, and David Letterman when I was 15 was the biggest like life-shifting kind of thing for me. So I would get whatever book. I would go to the B. Dalton, get whatever book kind of like had come out about The Second City. I think was a book that I read, trying to just figure out like how do people do this? How do people, transition into this? And then I moved to LA, and I still assumed that I couldn't do it because I just couldn't figure out the entry point, And so then, and I was just writing. I was writing plays, and I was just, writing.
Just on your own, just
Yeah.
not to get produced. I mean,
Well,
hopefully they would be, but-
trying to pass them out to friends, and I wrote a pilot, like a 1-hour pilot that was sort of before the OC. It was about like young guys, kind of like it was sort of like the OC,
No
but
way, they took you.
no, they didn't take me. but so then my friend, it was all just by chance. My friend that I met doing theater up in Sacramento, California, she moved down to LA, and her roommate from Sacramento was her old childhood friend, happened to be a comedian named Karen Kilgariff. And so my friend Maleva said, you're a really funny guy. What if you did this? They all kind of hang out at this show at the Comedy Store on Sunday nights. Like, I could get you on I could recommend you and say you're a really funny guy, and you could do the show once if you want. And so I said yes, and was just like terribly nervous about it, of like, what do you do? What do you do? And then that week, I had met Bob Odenkirk in a bar, and at a party that my friend kind of like said, oh, come meet some people. And he was like, he's so nice about talking to young people. He just kind of was like, oh, hey, buddy, so you're a writer. Oh, wow. God damn it. Someone just stepped on his toe. So
It's Chicago's own, right?
Chicago's own, yeah. Naperville.
Naperville's own.
So he was like interested in my writing, and then when like so disappointed when I said I'd only written, like I hadn't written anything that he would have seen, but he was still was like, well, if you want to see some stuff I've written, I'm doing this show, and he handed me this card. Goodbye.
They hate Bob Odenkirk.
Gotta admit, 25 years in the biz, it still stings.
Look at all the people who are staying. Doesn't work that way.
Doesn't work that way. But he handed me this flyer for his show that he was doing with David Cross, and it was at the time it was called the Cross Odenkirk Problem. And so I went to go see that, and it was his sketch show, and I remember like Bernie Brillstein was in the audience, and it was so funny, and it was the show that they were showing to HBO right before they were like filming their pilot. Like, hey, these are the sketches we're gonna do in the Mr. Show pilot. And it was so funny, and it just like unlocked something in my mind where I was like, yes, I see what to do now. Like I see what can be done, and it fills me with a lot of like ideas and optimism about what I could do. And it was just one of those really life-changing moments for me where suddenly seeing something on stage makes you realize that it's obtainable. So I did it at the Comedy Store that week, and there were, people in the audience. Bob and David were both there, and, it was Janine Garofalo and people like Sarah Silverman and Paul F. Tompkins and Margaret Cho and Kathy Griffin and all these like people who were just starting what was sort of getting to be known as alternative comedy at the time. And I just kind of fell in with that crowd. And
you became a writer for was
Yeah.
that your big? Is there a big break in the story, or is that?
So the second time I performed, Bob was there, and came up and was like, "Hey, that was really funny. You want to write for my TV show?"
Wow.
And Now, that said, he didn't hire me for another 3 years.
What happened?
He had enough people at that
yeah.
point. It just became like every year it would come up of like, hey, this year, and no, we have enough people. But he was very generous. He would like come either be in shows, sketch shows that I was putting on, or he would. I remember once he came all the way out to Santa Monica to see one. And he looked around at the crowd and was like, realized that he could warm them up. So he was like, hey, what if I came up and like warmed up the crowd and did
Wow.
like, 10 minutes beforehand and just like got them primed. And I was like, oh my God, thank you. And so it was like him legitimizing everything that I was doing. He would be in them. And I remember one time I wrote an hour and a half musical that I put up for one night in a bar. Paul F. Tompkins was in it. He was the lead in it, and Brian Posehn and all these people. And he was in the audience, and he was like, he saw me afterwards, and he goes, "Hey, can I ask you a question? Why did you do that?" He goes, "What?"
That was kind of my next question, but you should resurrect that. I mean, come on. One night only? That's...
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was very funny, but he asked me why I was doing it because he was like, "There are no producers here or anything." I was like, in my head, I'm going, "Bob, I'm doing it for you, so you hire me."
I'm sure there's writers here, aspiring writers, performers. We just saw these folks walk out. Like,
Thank you for reminding me.
How do you... You've had so much success, but like anybody, there are moments where you'll have a pilot. It doesn't get picked up. You'll write something. It doesn't get produced. How do you, what do you say to somebody who says, "Oh man, I'm sick of rejection"? It seems like it's just part of the deal.
Yeah, you have to really just become inured to it. Just with me recently, I was working on two. The thing that a friend of mine, the director of Shark Tale. Thank you. Chris Rock is wrong. Will Smith played a little tiny fish. He wanted to be a big fish. Lied about killing a shark, which set the whole plot in motion. He told me because I think I was focused early in my career. I think I was focusing on one project at a time so much, and then I would get devastated when they would go away. And he was like, "No. You have to work on 5 things simultaneously, because first of all, you will never survive with the pay structure if you're only working on one thing at a time, and then it doesn't happen." And then you take another 3 months to look for another job. You have to be working on 5 things constantly, because that would happen all the the one thing I learned about show business is that the companies love to hold on to their money. Any day they're not paying you, they're getting interest on their money.
That's true, right.
So I would do I would write a show for NBC, and then they would not pick it up, and then I would legitimately spend 1 year chasing getting paid for it. So he was like, "You have to stack up 5 things at a time and constantly just be juggling all this stuff." And it was really good advice, because now, I was working on 2 different scripts recently, and one of them basically fell apart the other day, and then the other one is suddenly getting a lot of producer attention. So it's just one of those things where you kind of have to be when someone gives you the phone call and goes "Hey, your thing fell apart," you just kind of go "Yeah, I expected that."
And you didn't, of those 2, could you have guessed which one was going to work and which wouldn't?
I thought for sure the one that fell apart was a slam dunk.
Interesting.
And the other one I love and is great, and so I'm really glad. But it's it's not a set thing anymore yet. So.
Right.
You just kind of have to keep pushing stuff up the mountain and hope that some of it sticks, and rejection is a huge part of it, and it's something that I don't really pay that much attention to all that much anymore.
Wow. We are going to show one last clip, which is...
Hell yeah.
which is Chicago themed.
Okay.
I mean, you have the same last name. Are you related?
Yes.
We're brothers.
Okay. So, or you could be married,
We
We're
could
not,
be.
but we're not.
but you're not. Okay, so you're brothers.
But if we were going to get married and our granddaughter was at our wedding, you don't need to get near the wedding.
Okay.
If our granddaughter is the flower girl at our wedding, walking down the aisle, sprinkling rose petals, and you show up there, you're not going to like what happens.
We'll have to take care of you. You'll end up in a Chicago overcoat. Yep,
What is a Chicago overcoat?
a coffin.
A coffin? Really?
That's right.
They call that a Chicago overcoat, even
That's
outside of
right.
Chicago?
That's right.
Everywhere around the country, they call it a Chicago
Everyone
overcoat.
knows it's a Chicago
Are
overcoat.
you guys from Chicago?
No.
No.
Yeah, I can tell.
Any thoughts?
I'm really glad those guys made it in the book. That was the last thing that made it in the book.
And who did the animation?
That's a guy named Matt, I believe. He
That's a very safe, even if you didn't know the name.
he just would do those for fun, and put them on Twitter. And so the process of the book, without going too far into it, is just getting a lot of stuff submitted to you and trying to figure out how many pages you have and how many pages you have left. And then right before the deadline, we thought we were 12 pages over what we were allotted, and so we frantically called up Abrams, the publisher, and said, will you approve more pages? And they all have to be in multiples of 16, I believe, with the way a book is put together. So they approved 16 more pages, and so we said, okay, we need to somehow get 4 more pages.
Now you needed more.
Now we needed more. And then Abrams called back and said, well, we just put the book together with your order, and you're actually 2 pages shy of the original. And so then
there
we
was
only
just counting errors.
it's So we had to get 2 more pages on the last day, and so I was just trying to figure out what we could do. And the Mink Salmon Brothers were, I think, Wet Day is when 410. Yes, 410. And this would have been in September. So yeah, I think the Mink Salmon Brothers were obviously, like, people really liked them. So I was like, okay, if we can get something with the Mink Salmon Brothers. So I just kind of, like, off the top of my head, visualized what ended up being in the book, which is the telephone pole flyer saying, "Have you seen our granddaughter?" That's all I had. It was basically like, and this is what I pitched Paul and Drew. I was like, it's a flyer, telephone pole flyer. It says, "Have you seen our granddaughter?" And then underneath it's, "Well, you better not have." and sent them an email saying, like, "Can you write this in the next day? Is that possible?" And then each of them separately wrote a whole bunch of, like, variations of it and what could go on the slips down at the bottom of the thing. And then I kind of edited it and arranged it in an order. But then we needed a photo, and so I reached out to the person who did that animation on Twitter, and asked if he would do the photo for the book. And then the other last thing was the opposite page is a Doug Gropes email. And I just reached out to Ryan Gall because we had just done the August tour and he had been insane doing Doug Grope stuff. And I just said, "Can you write me, like, whatever you would write in an email? If you can do it by today, I can get it in the book." So that's how it was put together.
There are so many jokes in the book. Like, if you don't like a joke, don't worry, because there's, like, rapid fire from throughout. Like, I don't think there's a line without a joke.
Yeah. We did a good job. No, yeah, that's great to hear. I mean, it really, I just wanted to do something, honestly. I'm glad people are liking it because I've been looking at it on a flat computer screen for so long, in a PDF form. And it's, when you're just scrolling up, I was kind of like, is this any good? And the last few months, I was just like, this feels like it's going to be too slight. Like, it's not enough stuff, is it? And everyone was kind of like, this is I think it's pretty good. And then when I got the actual book, I got the first copy. I was like, oh, okay, no, this.
Yeah.
I mean, it feels substantial to me, and it's all practically all new stuff. I'm glad we showed the Jesus Christ Superstar rap because that is one old thing that's in the book. So, but yeah, I think it's so great, and the people went above and beyond with their submissions, and like Taryn and Ryan and Paul doing that insanely detailed Calvin's triplets thing. I could tell sometimes when I'm bugging someone like, hey, can you get me this piece? Can you get it to me by this day? Do you think you can do it? You can tell when someone's written it in the 5 minutes right before they sent it to you, But with those guys, it truly was hey, what would you do as the Calvin's triplets? And I got a pretty quick email back of like, we'll work something out. And then maybe a week later got this email with all of this detail, and I couldn't believe it. And I was just like, how did you, I mean, they put so much work into it, and I think I'm just really glad that people are finally seeing it because I'm very proud of it.
But that's the show in general, I feel. Like people...
No, we half-assed the show. This, honestly, it's like the TV show. We put so much work into that, and everyone loves the podcast more.
Well, I think it's time to open it up to questions. So either somebody... There we go.
Yes, hello, folks. If you have a question, please raise your hand and a staff member will come around with a microphone for you. We do ask that you keep it to questions only. Try to keep commentary to a minimum so we can get to more questions. And try to keep your questions brief and clear to make it easier for our presenters to answer them. So who has our first question? Great. Your first one will be toward the back here to your right.
Should I stand? I should say. I'm going to refrain.
What's your name, sir?
Oh, Mehdi. Don't worry
Sorry?
about
Mehdi?
don't- Mehdi.
Mehdi.
I'm going to resist asking or talking you two to you. And one thing I was wondering was that sometimes when you get non-comedian guests on, it kind of feels like you have to like push them towards like, they, even though it's in the title, they don't really get that it's like a full-on comedy show. So do you ever have to do you have like tactics to like get them into that space, that joke space, or do you ever have to like pull them aside and be like, hey, don't take this so straightforward?
Yeah, I think if you hear me doing more of a normal interview, it's usually because whatever degree of normality it is how how much I don't know them personally, if that makes sense. Like the more I know someone personally, like David Wayne was on recently, and we can just like do my favorite thing, which is 30 minutes of total nonsense. But if I don't know someone personally, or I'm meeting them for the first time and I'm trying to suss out like, what is their vibe? Are they going to be cool with what's going on? Because we were talking backstage about when you're dealing with publicists, me being on the other side of it, I know how a person cannot read an email that a publicist is sending to them about what they're about to do. Case in point. No. So I get it, but I sometimes someone will arrive and be a little not realizing what they're in for because they haven't read the emails, So I'm usually trying to mitigate those factors and trying to like make sure that the publicist is passing on the information and also trying to know that like I'm cool. I'm not like just a rando. Like I had one person get really upset. This is early on at what happened in the show and walk out in disgust, right? And
you're not going to say who.
I'm not going to say who because that person does not need people bringing this up to them, or they're nice people. But and then I got an email the next day of like, oh, I had no idea you were the Between Two Ferns guy. I'm so sorry. It's like you can go into a situation and like not have any idea, and I have empathy for that. So a lot of the pre-job is me trying to set the table correctly and let people know what they're in for. And then during the interview, if I'm being like more polite, it's probably because I don't know them, but then I'm trying to like slip the jokes in at certain points and see what their limits are, you know? And if they're rolling with it and they're like laughing and seeming like they're having, like the recent Jason Alexander episode is a great one. Now, he had been on the TV show and we had met, but I don't know if he remembers that. I wouldn't. So you kind of start like at a normal place and then try to slip the jokes in, see where they're at, and if they're laughing and going along with it, then you can push it even further. And that's sort of the method. Please don't walk out.
Next question? Whoever you
Sure.
want. I don't want to be responsible for.
Understandable.
Yeah.
Next one's right down here in the front.
Hey.
Hi.
Hi.
My name is Abraham.
Abraham.
I had a question for the character you play on the podcast is like dragged a lot, but
You're reading this.
yeah, because I'm gonna forget. I'm sorry.
Did you write this question or is this from a friend?
No, I just wrote it while you were talking.
Better than the people who.
You say a lot of interesting stuff. I didn't want to forget. But was there ever a guest that you felt was like making fun of you too much and it went too far? Like the hentai stuff, I felt like you were very uncomfortable with that stuff.
I feel like I've told this story before, but you know how Paul F. Tompkins, most of his characters and I don't get along. So on not this last tour that we did, but the previous one, we did so many shows. I think did we do 35 shows in a row or something? I can't remember what it was, but in a month. And after a month of every night having a person hate you and talk about what a piece of shit you are, it's like I started to get legitimately bummed out. And that's not Paul at all, like, because we're good friends, you know, but it was just like, I started to go like, why do I feel bad today? You know, those internal check-ins you do with yourself. I realized it was because every night I go on stage and someone tells me that I suck. Now, the flip side to that is, and I feel comfortable saying this because we laugh about it, but there was one of the anniversary shows or Christmas shows that we did where we have a ton of people on. We had Will Hines on, and we were laying into him for some reason, which, by the way, we do on Monday's episode as well. But I feel like I was making fun of him for not getting something, right? And then he disappeared after the show. And I think he didn't take the picture with us or something. I don't know what it was, but like he didn't say goodbye, you know, or anything like that. He was just gone. And I started to get like very in my head about it. And one of my New Year's resolutions recently was like to apologize more to people, right? To be more present and to try to, you know, not be defensive and try to, you know, not feel like, well, I'm right in my head, to like reach out to people and try to apologize. So I called Will and I left him this like rambling 90-second message where I was like, hey, I just wanted to check in with you because I feel like you were upset and I feel like I was too mean and I feel really bad about it and you're not picking up and maybe you're avoiding the call and I'm so sorry. And he just texted me back like, no, I had to leave because I have a stand-up show. I'm on stage right now. No, I loved it. It was very funny. And so then he pitched me, because we were talking about CBB Presents ideas. He was like, what if we did a show where it was all about friends trying to check in if they're mad at each other? So I didn't need to apologize. But yeah, so I don't know. Things like that can happen. But hopefully everyone just kind of feels like it's light and funny and fun. But you never know.
All right, next. Where are
I know there's one right in the back up, or some up top. I know it's hard
One
to get
right
to.
in front
but
here.
Yeah, great.
Hi, Scott. My name
Hi.
is John. I was wondering, how did Sean Diston go from a fan and a great guest to an actual partner of yours?
Sean, yeah, he listened as a fan, and I first heard of him because Lauren Lapkus reached out to me and said, "Hey, there's this guy, Sean, you should know. He would do really well." That's sometimes how a lot of people get on the show, is just someone I respect says, "Hey, this person would do really well." So I think he had just been on her show as Skilo or something like that. So that's just one of the great joys, is when you can have a new person on and you just really click with them right away. So I just really love his whole sensibility. And knew from the first time he was on the show that, oh wow, he's really funny, I'm gonna have him back. And then as far as like doing a show with him, it really was a thing about the pandemic where just suddenly everything in show business shut down, and I think he was like in a writer's room maybe, and now was like not gonna get paid for anything, and so I just kind of for fun said like, hey, let's do this Ninja Turtles show that, you know, just for fun, and you can put it on your Patreon, and you know, maybe that'll give you the money you need to, like, during the pandemic, support yourself. So, and then I just really loved doing it. It was just really, that would be one of the highlights of the week for me. So, yeah, it just was kind of one of those things, and I think we have a really great rapport, and doing the movie show is really fun, and yeah, I mean, that's one of the great joys, is when you can just click in with someone and just say like, oh, this is a person I'm going to be working with for years to come.
All right, your next question is in the top right
All
corner
right.
up in the balcony.
Hell
here.
yeah.
Oh, that's me. Hi, my name is Cassie. I didn't write down my question, so.
Awesome. Off the dome.
Yeah. So in Scott Hasn't Seen, sometimes the podcast you do also on CBP World, sometimes when you're like talking about the movie, it's not. I wonder, like, because of the convenience of having the people there for you to do the show with, if you like prepare the intro.
You didn't write this down?
No, I don't. I had a question about like work-life balance, but I couldn't get it out of my head. So, do you sometimes like do the intro after you've already seen the show, or is there like a? I guess I'm just wanting to hear like how do you structure like how you do it, like with the guests? Because I know there's convenience of like, oh, they're going to be here this day for this show, so let's also do this, and you know.
Yeah, sometimes we would do it where we know what the next week is going to be, so we'll finish the previous show and then do the intro part for the next movie. But then sometimes the scheduling gets very complicated and we don't know what the next movie is going to be, so I would say more often than not, we're doing it while the person is there. And what I do is I write down, I take a lot of notes beforehand where I just like think of anything I can think of about the movie and I write it down. And then it's called acting. But I just put myself in the frame of mind of like what I would have said if you had asked me before I watched the movie, and then we talk about it like that. But and I think people have been tipped off to it because we are then. It is more fun because we're trying to make the third person laugh too. So it's like more fun for us with them. Like, but you can hear them sometimes laughing off mic. But yeah, but that's how we do it. I feel like we do it honestly in a way, but because it's what we would have, the conversation we would have had. Thank you.
I think we got time for like two more. So.
This next question will be in the back row.
Hi, my name's Jay, and
Jay.
I just want to know, who's your like favorite person that you've interviewed for like your podcast?
Favorite person that I've interviewed? Well, I mean, the one way to look at that question would be like, what are some of the ones where I really feel like I was sort of achieving something of like childhood dreams in a way? So I would say like the Paul Rubens first time he was on the podcast, and which then gave him the confidence that I was cool enough that he would do the TV show. And now, he wrote a blurb for the book. That's something that I thought was very cool. I know that that season on the TV show, everyone was going on strike, and I just kept being like, please let it be after the after the Paul Rubens day, please, because I just really wanted that to be Pee Wee Herman. That was a big that movie, Pee Wee's Big Adventure, was a huge influence on me. And similarly with David Letterman for the Between Two Ferns movie, that was a thing where when we put it out there hoping he would do it, and when we got the confirmation that it was going to happen, it was a very complicated thing to do, doing it in New York, not in LA, but and all of the details that went into it. But that was just one of those things, like, at one point during the setup of a shot, I made him laugh with a joke, and unexpectedly, and that was like, you feel good doing that, so those are kind of the things, and I got to do that a lot on the Bang Bang TV show, have on comedians that meant a lot to me as a kid, along with having, the next generation of people on. So that kind of stuff is very meaningful to me, I would say.
Let's take one more.
All right, we have one last question up in the balcony here, way toward the back center.
Great.
Oh, wow.
Hey.
Hi, I'm Andrew.
Hi, Andrew.
I was wondering, you talked about like having like 5 irons in the fire, basically, like doing multiple things so that you become a little more desensitized to rejection. So I was wondering how you do that without burning out, in essence.
You don't? Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I guess you do have to work hard in the business, unfortunately. I don't know. You have to. I tell you, the worst year of my life probably was the year. Not worst year of my life, because I've been totally broke and with a shitty job before show business. Those were terrible years. But like the worst year of my show business life was probably the last year of the Bang Bang TV show, where I did that while simultaneously writing for the Emmys, while simultaneously writing for the Oscars, while simultaneously writing for With Bob and David, the Netflix show, while simultaneously editing my show and editing Bajillion Dollar Properties, and working on, I think, Take My Wife. Like, all those things were happening at the same time, and it was like real feast or famine kind of thing, where you start to say, like, well, I can't turn things down, because these opportunities don't come along very often to do all these things. And so you start saying, like, well, I have to say yeah. And I even said no to the Oscars. And my agent called me one day and said, like, we made your deal for the Oscars. And I said, like, no, I can't do it. And he said, just show up whenever you can. So there legitimately was a year of my life. Oh, and then I also did a tour right after that. So there was a year of my life where I had one day off, and that was Valentine's Day, which I spent with my wife. But that was a really tough year, and that the strain was showing, along with doing the podcasts, So, but then you start to feel like, well, I'm lucky. Should I be complaining? Should I? And so I would just put my head down, and I would just like go, nope, I'm just going to work hard. We're going to get through this, and it does take a toll. So I think after that, I went into the Michael Bolton thing, and then the Between Two Ferns movie. But after that, COVID like really was the great like equalizer of like, hey, everyone take a break, in show business at least. So I think that's when I started to feel like more like a normal person in a way, of like, whoa, I felt insane. And then I look at my calendar from back then. I looked at my calendar from back then, and legitimately, like, every 15 minutes of my life was was accounted for like 14-hour days. Yeah, it's you start to see what people like a Ryan Seacrest or these people who have these insanely busy schedules where they're producing a lot of stuff. Like you start to see like, oh, this is how they feel every second of the day, and do you really want to feel like that? And I think no. So yeah, it's very difficult to do. Wow, that ended this show on
No, yeah.
such a bummer.
But there's a signing, a book signing. So that's
It's a book signing.
yeah.
I'll try to be funny in that.
Yeah. The book is Comedy Bang Bang, the podcast. It's wonderful. Everybody
Thank
get
you.
it. Scott Aukerman, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.